Hello, hello. We're just going to launch right into it because I know everyone is busy, busy. It's a busy time of year. Every year, time of year is busy. I don't know what I'm talking about. But happy Tuesday, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Kate Markham. I am the managing director of Art House Convergence, and I am beyond delighted today to talk about science on screen. And I'm so glad we've got Beth Gilligan here from the Coolidge Corner Foundation and Science on Screen Initiative to talk with Colin Mannix and Rebecca Fons about how they do science on screen at their cinemas and this fantastic program. And I'm so grateful, Beth, that this is offered to our art houses across the United States, and I cannot wait to hear more. So I will hand it off to you.
Great, thank you so much. And just to put in a plug, I'll be in Chicago in late July for the Art House Convergence and hope that many of you here on this Zoom will be as well. I have a presentation that I'm going to share. And then basically the format of this is, oh wait, let me get to the first slide too. Um, we'll run through presentation, some basics about science on the screen that some of you may have heard before, some not. Colin and Rebecca are here to talk about science on the screen in their organizations. And then we can take any questions. Oh, darn, of course, now I have to help my security settings to share via Zoom. Hold on. It's a beautiful presentation if we can ever bring it up. Oh, I have to. Hey, Kate, if I share the presentation with you, can you screen share?
Yeah,
Okay. Sorry about that.
no worries.
It's a settings thing. It tells me I have to quit Zoom to change it.
I love when Zoom decides to do updates right when you need to do something important.
Yes.
All right, hold on.
But the grant deadline is August 13th. So at the end, if people have questions about the grant opportunity or the application, we definitely want to leave time for that. But while we're waiting, Colin and Rebecca, do you want to introduce yourselves? Then we can skip that slide.
Yeah, I'm Rebecca Fons. I'm the director of programming at the Gene Siskel Film Center. And I can't change my settings on my computer at all because I'm part of an academic institution. So I understand, like I have to call like a person to come and do it. So I get it.
I'm Colin Mannix. I'm the director at the Kenworthy Performing Arts Center in Moscow, Idaho, right up in the northern corner, adjacent to the Washington state line. And so we are really proximal to both University of Idaho here in Moscow, it's just down the street, and then Washington State University in Pullman, which is just 7 miles away.
Oh, now it's letting me share, actually. Um, so can you see Rebecca and Colin
Mhm.
the
Yep.
presentation?
Yep.
Okay, so that was an exciting twist and turn. Okay, so basically, this is Science on Screen again. I'm Beth Gilligan. I've been with the Coolidge Corner Theatre. I'm currently deputy director there for many years, and also run the sort of National Science on Screen initiative. So again, this is us. You just met us. This is our contact info. We can make this deck available to anyone on the Zoom. Kate can distribute it after the call. Um, this is just, I'll run through this pretty quickly because again, I think probably many of you may have heard some version of this before. But just to review, Science on Screen began at the Coolidge in 2005. This fall is going to be our 20th anniversary. We need to plan something great to celebrate that. Don't know what that is yet, but it'll be spectacular. But basically, it came out of the idea that Boston has a strong scientific community, a lot of universities around us, and really tapping into that local talent, and bringing much easier to bring speakers from the world of science to your cinemas than it is actors and filmmakers necessarily. So these are people rooted in the community, happy to share their research. Back in 2010, we partnered with the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation to be able to do what we're doing now, expand this program to other art house cinemas across the country. And since 2010, we've awarded nearly, it's going to be 3 million come August. and grants to 131 film and science focused organizations in 45 states plus DC. Over 200,000 people have attended science on screen events. The Sloan Foundation, I know, is particularly interested in those five unrepresented states because they're very data driven. So if you're an art house in Wyoming listening to this, or North Dakota, I forgot what the other three are, feel free to apply because we would love to sort of have a full 50 state outreach network. Um, Now this is okay, here we go. This is our team. I couldn't find a picture of Patrick online. He doesn't look like that. He's actually quite young and handsome, but the fact that he's not on the internet, despite being a social media person, tells me he doesn't want to be like out in the world. So I put that photo in. But he's our latest addition. He's sort of helping maintain the Science on Screen social media feeds. Kristen, if anyone on this call is a current grantee, has emailed with Kristen. She's kind of the great source of information for all things Science on Screen. People send her program updates. That's me, all the things I do. Um, and this is our current list of grantees. So you can see Science on Screen is happening many places in the United States. I think this is a group of about 40 grantees, and we hope to award another roughly 40 grants this late this summer. So I think as many places as we can bring this program, especially given the current atmosphere in the United States around and discourse around science and scientific research, the more we can connect our audiences with the scientists living in their community who are their neighbors and peers, we think the better. This is again just to remind people that you don't have to. Boston does have a few Nobel laureates in the mix, and it's great. We're always happy when they can come and speak, but it can also be a high school chemistry teacher, it can be somebody working at a local hospital. Science journalists are great because they can unpack really complex topics in a way that's really accessible. So everybody in any community really has access to great scientific talent. Um, Part of the grant requirement, which we'll get to a little bit later, is that grantees show at least one film that has won a Sloan Award. So it's either the Sloan Foundation has supports public understanding in science and technology. They're very committed to it, and they see film as a medium to make a lot of those ideas accessible, to portray scientists in interesting light. So one of the three films that anyone who gets a Science on Screen grant has to show is going to be a Sloan film. So we have that listing on our website where you can filter through. There are many, many to choose from, just highlighting a few recent titles. The great documentary about Sally Ride that played at Sundance. Really, really interesting story, interweaving her personal journey with, her pioneering work as the first U.S. woman in space. There's an indie film called Love Me with Kristen Stewart, also in space, and Stephen Yeun. And Oppenheimer received a Sloan grant as well. Pretty much all of the Christopher Nolan films, I think many of them have received recognition from Sloan or have been like very popular with the Science on Screen circuit. Here are some more Sloan films from recent years. Coded Bias, I would put in a plug for because I just feel like it was sort of underseen. It came out during the pandemic and it's got some very interesting ideas about facial recognition technology and what the implications are. Diving Bell and the Butterfly, beautiful Julian Schnabel film. Hidden Figures, great film about the women behind the space program. But of course, beyond Sloan, one of the things that we like to do is really come up with sort of unexpected pairings because we at the Coolidge we found that when you take kind of like an eat your broccoli approach to Science on Screen programming, you're limiting your audience a little bit. We have done some very like hard science films with tie-ins, but some of our most popular and enduring events have been things like when we showed Amadeus. I was able to find a speaker from Northeastern University. She's a neuroscience by training, but also a professor of creativity and creative practice, which sounds like the coolest job and has like a music neural imaging lab. She talked about music genius, creativity in the mind. Really interesting look into Amadeus, which was, I felt like, it hadn't gotten screened here often enough. Sometimes that's the way to program, is just something you want to see on the big screen, and find a science angle, and it can be part of the series. This was another one, very, very unexpected pairing. There was a materials and engineering professor at MIT who teaches a class called Coffee Matters, and it's about like the chemistry and engineering behind like the perfect cup of coffee. And he brought like demos, and we basically showed two things I know about her, because there's that iconic scene where the coffee's swirling and they're musings on the universe. And I just felt like that film had gone to screen recently, and who doesn't like some late 60s Godard? So that was a really fun one. And he taught us all about coffee, the physics and the chemistry of it. Um, Another one, we had a woman from BU who'd written a fascinating book about biology and bias, and how much of our social identities are based in genetics. And we did X-Men First Class, which I think most people wouldn't think of necessarily as a science movie. And then the final one from the Coolidge recently was the Babadook. There's a woman a science journalist, who wrote a book called Mother Brain: How Neuroscience is Rewriting the Story of Parenthood. And she talked about the structural and functional brain changes that new parents experience. Obviously, the Babadook being a great horror film, so film about motherhood. So just interesting, popular, unexpected ways to engage general audiences with these topics. I think there's also just the feel that scientists are often really excited to show a film that's a little off the beaten track, and also they often present at conferences where they're speaking with their peers. This gives them the opportunity to engage with the general public, which is always really fun for them. And often they'll have friends and family in the audience. It's great theater outreach too, because if they have any kind of social media following, they'll usually promote it on whatever platforms they're on. So you're reaching people that you wouldn't necessarily reach. And now I'm going to throw it over to Rebecca to talk about her experience programming it at Gene Siskel Film Center in Chicago, and what some of their more popular programs have been, and what she's gotten out of it. So
Awesome.
go from
Thank
there.
you so
Thanks.
much. Thanks, Beth. So the Gene Siskel Film Center is a public program of the School of the Art Institute here in Chicago. We're a nearly 55-year-old cinema, and we're located in downtown Chicago. So if any of you attended the Index conference last June, or you're coming to the Art House convening this July, you are familiar, or you'll become familiar with our cinema. We've got two screens, a 200-seat theater and a 60-seat theater, and we're open 365 days a year. We present new release, international, art house, independent, and Chicago-made films and repertory programs that are usually thematic or auteur driven, alongside festivals that we produce, like our European Union Film Festival and our Black Harvest Film Festival. And then we host so many film festivals that are just partner programs, like Chicago International Film Festival, Chicago Palestine Film Festival, the Asian American Showcase, et cetera, et cetera. And we host an experimental media series called Conversations at the Edge, and a spring and fall lecture series that is taught by faculty here at the School of the Art Institute. So we just wrapped our 5th consecutive year of Science on Screen granted programming. And what we love about the Science on Screen program is, amongst all of that programming that we do, which is like a lot of programming, the Science on Screen presentations really stick out as something different from our regular programming that our audience really enjoys, because it brings something entirely new to the film center. And I think it brings an entirely new audience, and it also brings something entirely new for our kind of loyal regular audience. So when we're presenting films, for instance, in our European Union Film Festival, we just did like a spotlight on Polish cinema. If we're doing a talk back after, a film like like one of the three colors, like after Blue, we're talking about, cinematography, and we're talking about like Polish history, and that's sort of like within our wheelhouse, and that's all great and excellent. But it's sort of like par for the course. But if we do something with Science on Screen, we're sort of like shaking an entirely new conversation loose. And I feel like the audience sort of looks around and they're like, are we in a movie theater? Like, this is a new kind of sense and feel of a conversation, which I think is really special. And it usually the tone of conversation and the engagement in the theater is really different. So as a curator, that's very exciting for me, and for audiences, I think it's really exciting for them, and they sort of see us as a new kind of place, which is great as a 55-year-old institution, to have people see us as a place where different kind of conversations than they're used to happen. That is excellent. And I think that's like, it's kind of rare for that to happen. You know, it can kind of feel like you're kind of repeating things over and over again. So Science on Screen kind of allows us to have something new happen in this space. A recent example of this that we had, I think this was our last Science on Screen presentation in this 2025 grant year. It was one of my favorite Science on Screen presentations we've ever done. I was like so mad it's not the one we filmed, and I was like, I actually filmed a bunch of it on my phone because I was like, why aren't we documenting this one? We presented the Jackie Chan film Police Story, and we followed it with a discussion by two stuntmen here who are here in Chicago. There's a lot of production here in Chicago, TV and film. And we had stuntmen Greg Puljacek and Christian Litke, and they've worked on like The Bear. There's stunts in The Bear apparently, Dark Knight, and like all the Chicago PD and like Chicago fire shows. So they these like two stunt guys, and we had a packed house for Police Story, which like of course there's a packed house. And first they had a conversation about like how they got into the work. And it was really poetic, actually. Like they both were like inspired by Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin, and they were both theater kids. And then they got into the work, and they talked about that. And then they talked about like the actual like physics and mechanics, the training that they have to do, the mental headspace they have to be in, and what they have to like, you know, and literally like the things like when they have to do firework and when they have to prepare for like car scenes and the different safety and security measures that they have to do. And the audience was completely wrapped, like nobody left. And I think part of that is because we had promised that they were going to do a stunt like example afterwards. They were going to do like a scene. They were going to do a stunt scene. So I think that's part of the reason no one left. We like buried the lead a little bit. So it was great. So they did this big conversation. It was like a 45-minute conversation. And then at the very end, they did a demo in front of the audience, which was amazing. It was like more exciting than I thought it would be. And they really like were rough and tumble. I had them get really far away from the screen. Our tech director was very scared about that. But it was amazing. And it was sort of like, you know, we were talking about science, we were talking about psychology, we were talking about safety, and then they did this like physical event at the end. It was really, really fun. It was one of my favorites. And then a few of my other favorites that we've done that I'll mention, some of those like unusual or unexpected pairings that Beth was talking about. We recently did a screening of The Fountain, which is Darren Aronofsky film, a Sloan grantee, so that was our Sloan requirement. And we had Dr. Michael Burns, who's a cancer molecular geneticist, and then Dr. Joe Vukov, who's a professor of philosophy. And the two of them had started a group at Loyola University about science and religion, and they had a study group. And so I found them first, and they had a conversation about kind of what we understand about death and dying in terms of science and in terms of like faith and religion. Beth, you mentioned like sometimes speakers will come and give a presentation they've given before. And this was the case. Like these two doctors, Dr. Burns and Vukov, had done this presentation, but they tailored it to the film, which was amazing. They sort of like, where does the Hugh Jackman character like kind of fit on like, what does death mean? Is it an ending forever, or is it like a pathway to something new? They had these sort of different graphs on the screen. They were very funny. They were very engaging, and they asked the audience to engage and sort of where do they fit on this graph. So there were some soft sciences and some hard sciences, and it was a really wonderful conversation. And of course, the film, we played it on 35 millimeter, and lots of like film bros. I say that with all the love in my heart. A lot of film bros came out. And so that was also a really nice way to pair, like, you know, again, like people are like, where's the science in this? And then it was both the cancer discussion, the cancer geneticist discussion, and then also the religion and faith discussion. And then two other examples I'll share. This was a few years ago. We showed Sidney Lumet's Failsafe, and we welcomed Daniel Holtz, who's a professor at the University of Chicago in the Department of Physics. And he's also a member of the Science and Security Board at the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists. And they're the folks who do the doomsday clock, which is like very scary. And they set the doomsday clock like close to midnight. If you've ever seen The Watchmen, or you've read rather The Watchmen, the graphic novel, you know, the doomsday clock plays a big part of that. And there's an actual doomsday clock, and the team that sets the doomsday clock is the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists. And they convene here in Chicago, and a lot of them are based here in Chicago. and Daniel Holes is part of them. And so they had just set the doomsday clock to 90 seconds to midnight. It's now at 89 seconds to midnight. So this was a few years ago. So we showed Failsafe, and then Daniel did a conversation about sort of like why the doomsday clock had been set to 90 seconds. Because this was such a bummer of a presentation, and I think we did it on a Monday night, we gave away free popcorn and beer. And that really brought people out. But then the conversation actually ended up being quite like positive. And we talked about AI. We talked like why it was closer to midnight, like AI, global warming, politics, media. Like it became this sort of like overarching conversation about not just science, but poli-sci, health and housing, like urban development and growth. So it was really like it became more than what I thought it would even be. And then my final example is one we did recently. We have a series here called Off Center, which is programmed by our tech director, Michael Wazenik. And we did a program called Experiments in 3D, where we presented a bunch of different type of 3D films, and we handed out different like old school 3D glasses, different 3D technology. And we would say like now put on the 3D glasses number one, and we showed a 3D film that used those kind of glasses. And then we said now put on 3D glasses number two, and showed people the different kinds of 3D technology. And everybody got to keep their glasses, which was like everybody came for the glasses. And then we showed them how this 3D technology worked. And that was fun because someone who works internally within the film center was the expert, which was a really fun experience. And everybody, was like holding onto the 3D glasses, and they were all neon colors. They got to pick their favorite colors. It was a lot of fun. So the last thing I'll say is what I love about the Science on Screen grant is that within the parameters of the grant, it allows curators and cinemas to really play. And the best piece of advice I can give, having done Science on Screen here at the Film Center and at Film Scene where I was previously, is that there's always a film that you can find that fits with the subject matter that you want to explore. And that's sort of the easy part, I guess. The harder part is finding the expert. I think like I've sort of sometimes like gotten really attached to a film. Like I'm like, I really, really want to show this film. And I sort of get cute about it. And then I'm stuck trying to find the expert in Chicago, or I find the expert and they can't do it or they're not available. So my biggest piece of advice, if you're a grantee or you're thinking about applying, is like find the expert and like get a rapport with them and make sure that they're available. And they also have like that they could speak in front of the public and be charming about it too. Because I think like the best Science on Screen presentations we've had is when there's an expert who has that sort of like public speaking, effortless public speaking piece about them. And then you can find a film. Like there's so many films that have an element to the expertise or the topic that you want to pair with the expert. The Fountain, for example, it was perfect. It was a perfect film. But they even mentioned the two experts. They mentioned like so many other films that deal with death and science and faith that they were like, you could go and watch this. They had like a screening, like at-home screening watch list. They were like, go watch all these other films and you can think more about these themes. And then also we get feedback all the time from our audience that they're like, we want more talkbacks, and we're a really small team and we're not able to pay honorariums to people who lead talkbacks. So it's just so wonderful to have a grant that we're able to give honorariums to these experts. And we're also able to have people who we can just like put in front of the audience with a mic and they can speak eloquently about their expertise. And it allows us to kind of like sit back and relax. I mean, obviously it's a lot of work to find them, schedule them, book the films and all that. But we are able to give our audiences what they crave, more conversations in our theater, and more like, very robust and rigorous and intellectual conversations. And, I'm not necessarily robust and intellectual all the time, and I can't be in the theater every single night leading and moderating conversations. So to be able to give audiences what they've asked us for and to do it so like holistically and so intentionally is really a gift. So I don't know that you need me to endorse the grant, but I think like it's just it's like a unicorn grant. It allows you to play, it gives audiences what they want, and it brings something new to your cinema. So big fan, big Science on Screen grant fan, and we just had so much fun with it. So that's all I have to say from Chicago.
That's wonderful. You're doing amazing work. Thank you so much.
Thank
Glad you
you.
remain unscathed after the stunt demo.
And
Good.
our screen was fine. Our screen was fine.
Yeah,
I
there
kept
we
my
go.
promise to
See?
our tech team.
So that's science winning out. We'll go on to Colin. You're up if you want to talk about science.
Yeah.
You're one of our newer grantees
Yeah,
for the
so
past few
I'm here
years.
to, I
So
think,
go for it.
represent part of the rural contingent here out in Moscow, Idaho. Our population here is 25,000. The theater, the Kenworthy Performing Arts Center, has been around since 1926. It's on the National Registry of Historic Places, and we've been a nonprofit since 1999. And we've kind of retained the same signature mix of live arts, performing arts, and cinema. We're the most active historic theater in Idaho with over 500 events happening each year on our single screen uh, auditorium room. And we do a mix of, theater and music and readings. And we're pretty much the main community center here in Moscow. We run films about 85% of the time. So for us, our repertory programming is a major anchor in our just regular monthly calendar. And this, I would just like to echo Rebecca, and that this is a lot of fun for us to be able to have the opportunity to play with different programming choices that we might feel a little bit hesitant about pursuing without that extra support and without that initiative to do the outreach to bring folks in from different facets or different walks of life, different parts of the community that haven't been previously engaged. Uh, as I mentioned earlier, we are really close to two major universities here, land grant universities. And so the mission of those colleges is to engage people. It goes back to the land grant mission of the 1850s and 60s when UI and WSU were founded, to bring education to folks in agricultural communities that would not have previously had that access. And I think that the spirit of that uh, kind of university ethos is maintained in this recognition of community programs that have value to folks who are not necessarily immediately a part of the university community, but adjacent. And so we've had a lot of really great buy-in, and it also helps. I have full disclosure that my wife is a neuroscientist at WSU, so we have access to a lot of folks within our extended network that are very receptive. And I should just mention, for those of you who are kind of wondering how to approach scientists, they have, in many cases, an outreach component that's required for their own grants. So when you're asking them to make an appearance at a local cinema, you're not just asking them for a favor, you might actually be asking for something that satisfies a work component for them that they have otherwise, maybe not known exactly how they're going to address. So in some cases, it can be a really fortuitous opportunity to engage folks who are looking exactly for this kind of opportunity in pairing with you and the programming that you do. Um, this is our second year we've just completed, and it's been phenomenal. I think that when it comes to selecting films and scientists, we kind of look at a Venn diagram of overlapping interest between the film and then the subject matter. And Rebecca, you mentioned earlier, Film Bros, we love them. They're great. There's a hardcore science fiction contingent that may not be very perfectly situated for this program that we have, at least we found in our rural community. So I have not had the best luck when thinking about titles like Blade Runner or Annihilation. For us, it's people who are genuinely curious in the subject matter, or maybe there's a morbid sense of fascination. They can't help but bring themselves out to engage in the program because, I mean, why not? And so examples would include, I mean, 2001 Space Odyssey. We're shooting straight down the middle with our opening for this program when we launched our grant initiative here last year, and we brought in a physicist who studies black holes. So, there was a genuine sense of curiosity, and there's a nice overlap with the enduring interest in the title. It had been a while since 2001 had played on our cinema and our screen, and so that was an easy win. In terms of morbid fascination, we showed Face Off with Ryan Driscoll, who is a skin biologist expert who was able to actually talk about the plausibility of a facial transplant, which is something that is entirely doable at this point in time. And I mean, people were really kind of wondering, I mean, is this the real deal? I mean, is this actually something that you could pull off? And the answer was more or less yes. And I mean, he was able to address that with like kind of that casual, very familiar way of delivering information that people wanted without having to parse through all the footnotes. And so that was really great. Anything that addresses local pride is another, I think, surefire way to build strong programming. We have at WSU the only grizzly bear research center in the world where grizzly bears are roaming up on the Palouse Hills. And there's a lot of science around sleep and around the functionality of their livers and their metabolism and circadian studies that are happening there. And so that was a really great and easy opportunity for us to bring in Grizzly Man because all the bear researchers there have opinions about that film. And of course, that's a Sloan film. We brought them out. And in some ways, it kind of ended up being an event not just for the public, but for the scientists to get together, to socialize, to have a beer, talk about the movie afterwards, talk about what's happening. Some of them had left the research center, had come back, and they were in town for this screening, and it was a way for them to connect with old colleagues and peers. And again, that kind of speaks to the specific function of our theater, where it's very much a third space, a meeting space. Very much a small town kind of a vibe, and that was definitely an easy win. We also address kids programming with our Science on Screen grant, and we had a lot of success with Hidden Figures, which is another Sloan film last year, in partnering with the local STEM Education Center, the Palouse Discovery Science Center. They had a team of trained educators who did a demonstration of how to read the night sky, and then they provided maps of the night sky and invited everyone to go out after the film and look up and map the stars in the night sky. And that was just, I mean, that was fantastic. I mean, that to me speaks to the kind of work that we're trying to achieve on multiple levels in engaging younger people, STEM education, and then also fulfilling that requirement to have actual experts in the field because a lot of them were doing their work with the Discovery Center as a volunteer component as scientists or postdocs over at WSU. So that's kind of my quick overview. I'd say also, if you're looking for scientists, nonprofits are another great place to look. If you have any nonprofits in your area that are committed to environmental justice, for instance, those are frequently helmed by folks with PhDs in their fields, and you can show something like Aaron Brockovich and bring someone out to talk and about the real deal, in terms of environmental justice activism and say relationships to the press. So I think there are lots of places to look that excite that sense of genuine curiosity. And yeah, I just love the opportunity to play because every time we do something like this, we do a Science on Screen program, I feel like we have genuinely and successfully engaged new groups of people that otherwise haven't been a part of the K-Pack crew, as we call it. So yeah, that's my quick overview.
Thank you so much. I didn't realize that about like Face Off being like true to life. So you learn something new every day.
Yeah.
But no, thank you both. You're both doing excellent work in your communities, and it's so creative and inspiring that I love it. Um, let's see. I see something in the Q&A. Somebody we're already getting a couple questions. How much funding did you receive and how to allocate the funding? Is there a template you could share? I can answer that one. So our grants are currently up to $9,000. You are, well, actually, I think it's on the grant guidelines. Um, this is the eligibility of who can, and then I'll kind of get to the specifics of that question of who can apply. Basically, US-based nonprofit art houses, museums, film festivals, as long as you have a year-round footprint, because one of the priorities of the Sloan Foundation, because festivals, there are always like so many films that they don't want things getting lost in the shuffle. And if it's just three films that all happen within like a 1 week period and not throughout the year, that sort of dilutes the impact. I think Sloan in particular wants this to be sort of like a year-round perennial program. And you can, it's a minimum of three screenings, but you can certainly do more than that. I know, Colin, we were very impressed. You're extremely prolific in your early seasons. So it's kind of however many you want to make sense for your organization, but it has to be at least three, one of which is a Sloan film. Um, Anyone who's current grantee can reapply. If you were a previous grantee and didn't get it last year or in the last few years, you are always welcome to reapply. We are open to different formats. If you most at this point in time are in person. We do outdoor screenings now. We have a partnership with we do in person, or rather in theater most of the year, but in the summer we now do a partnership at the Rose Kennedy Greenway in downtown Boston. Um, it's another fun way to kind of reach different audiences. And usually the intros are a little bit shorter with the outdoor crowd, but we've had a tremendous response. We actually have Blade Runner coming up, and our program director, Mark Anastasio, has become very attached to showing Point Break on President's Day, which annoys me because I'm always out of town on President's Day. So we're bringing Point Break to the Greenway. Got somebody talking about the effects of adrenaline on the brain and like skydiving and all the rest. So that should be a fun one. So if you want to do outdoors, people have done drive-ins, summer screenings, go for it. Hybrid and virtual programming are eligible. Um, there are two applications this year. We sort of had a confusing alumni category in years past. Basically, we winnowed it down. So there's one application for returning grantees, and one for new and non-recent grantees. So basically, non-recent, we mean you haven't received a science sunscreen grant within the past 5 years. But if you have, you could do the returning grantees application. It's just a little less, fewer materials. We try to make this as easy as possible because we all know the art house world, it's really, really, we're all really busy. You do have to kind of map out your programming. You don't have to stick to that necessarily. If there's a print snafu or if just something comes up that you really want to do instead. But we hope that it's just a way for you to just kind of get it figured out and then you're done for the season. And also it just helps us in the application process to sort of evaluate kind of what the thinking is. Um, these are the dates. So the deadline is August 13th. You'll know by late September. Hopefully before then. We had to push the deadline a little later because we're going to be at the Art House Convergence in Chicago and wanted to give people there some time to, who are hearing about it for the first time, a little more time to reply. So the response date is a little later than it was last year, but we're going to try to get that to you as soon as we can. Um, this is more info, including the website, which has the grant guidelines. So now let me circle back to the funding question. So it's a maximum of $9,000 a cinema, minimum of three events. One of them has to be a Sloan film. There is a budget template on the website. If you go to the application materials, we do have a sample budget for grantees because we found that people liked the guidance. It shows sort of what's eligible and what's not. You can cover a portion of, if you have program staff working on the program, honoraria, as Rebecca mentioned. We ask that people video one of the events that they do. That cost is in there, so it's kind of up to each theater. So if you go on the website, you can find that. Second question is it recommended to go wide and try to reach different audiences, multiple topics, or would a themed Science on Screen slate be better? Uh, I think, Rebecca and Colin can weigh in on this. We've never done a themed slate, but I know some grantees have. I think it's really, your theater better than anyone, and what's going to connect with your audiences. I think so. It's really up to you, but we've done them so they've just been kind of all over the map. But if there's a certain topic, I don't know, Rebecca, did you ever do themed?
Yeah, we did themed in 2024 with the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists. So we had that great fail-safe screening with Daniel Holes, and a lot of the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists folks had come in 2023. And then they approached us and they were like, we really loved this. And they really wanted to do something, like they had that sort of like initiative that they wanted to kind of pursue. And also Oppenheimer was coming out in 2024. So I think they were sort of like, people are going to be talking about like atomic bombs and like the end of the world. It's going to be on everybody's mind. So we started talking in early 2024 about like doing something like substantive together. And I was like, well, we're going to be applying for the Science on Screen grant. I was like, if we get the grant, like let's reconvene. And so we got the grant and then we did five, I'm pulling up like our full program. We did I want to say we did one, two, three, four, we did four screenings with them. So we did Godzilla, Don't Look Up, Contain, which I think was the Science on Screen film, maybe.
Yeah, that was,
Yeah,
yeah.
The Sloan film, Contagion, and then War Games, the '83 film. And it was, I liked it. Like, I think it was great to have like a partner, like a secured partner, like a co-partner. Um, I liked it and like we chose the films together and I certainly was like, we need to have a Sloan film and they really like supported the finding the experts and they had like this really, really broad network of like deep experts. Like I would have never found the people that they found for like, this like director of life sciences from somewhere. And they even like brought some people in that like they were, they had finances that supported some like bringing people in that the grant wouldn't have covered. And certainly we like provided honorariums and they also hosted receptions after like all of the screenings, like with food and things. Um, but I did feel like my like curatorial like itch wasn't really scratched, and there were some things that like I did feel like audiences respond when we do things like stunts. It's like that's really fun. And also it was like a bummer. It was like our whole program was called "It's the End of the World as we know it," and like we don't feel fine. So I think like audiences maybe like once we'd done Contagion, they were like, this isn't fun anymore. So like doing stunts, doing like we did Akiru the year before and we talked about like the science of happiness and like that was really fun. We had like a happiness expert who'd like had done an article in the New York Times. So like I talk about like that sense of play. Like if you kind of lock into a theme, it's possible like you might be like, oh, I'm not having the play that I wanted to. I'm not having that like curatorial kind of muscle stretch that I maybe wanted to do. And you might find that you're sort of not having the diversity of experts that you wanted to do, and diversity in all senses of the word, either in who the experts are or the kinds of sciences you want to address. So yeah, I mean, it was great. This is like no shade to the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists. They were like brilliant and amazing, and they were amazing partners. But we didn't do that the next year. Like this year, we spread our wings and flew, and we did something different. So, the audiences responded, but we just were like, we tried that, and we'll do something different next year.
Yeah, thank you. That's very helpful. Colin, did you want to say something?
Yeah, we haven't done a specific theme, but it's sort of quasi-themed in the access to the scientists that we have. So UI agriculture, that's major. I mean, they're pulling in like $50 million ag grants, and they have a lot of resources to invest in specifically these kinds of programs. They get their media team engaged, and they're able to do some press with us for events. But we don't want people to feel like it's kind of a routine thing. So we try to mix it up and we don't try to like brand it under like some sort of thematic umbrella with their engagement. We did Interstellar and the Blight with them and talked about the science of the blight that is the kickoff for the film. We are planning on doing tremors and soil science with them next year. That had to be delayed due to some uncertainty that scientists are facing, just like arts organizations. And then we're also going to be bringing out Temple Grandin to speak as a major event that was also delayed, that was intended to happen this year, but it'll happen next year. So sometimes, yeah, we just don't want people to feel like it's too predictable, or things are happening in a sort of a rote kind of fashion. So we do it. We're like unofficially themed is basically like what we do with the access to the folks we have.
That's great. This sound great, the upcoming. Okay, so the third question, and I should just say while we're on the screen, the website is scienceonscreen.org. You can find a list of Sloan films there. You can also find every Science on Screen program that has ever happened since I think 2000, since 2005. I think they're all on there. Starting obviously it was just the first 5 years were just the Coolidge, but it's meant to be a resource and a source of inspiration. And I think in the art house world, even if you're doing the same film in topic that's been featured by another theater, it's not like we're competing for like Moscow, Idaho's audiences or Chicago's audiences. We all have different audiences. And I think, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. The talk is just automatically going to be different because you have a different speaker, but don't be afraid to go in there. And if you see a cool program that another theater has done, the idea is, try, come up with your own similar thing. I mean, I think there have been, I don't even know how many theaters I've lost track have done Hidden Figures, Science on Screens. Jurassic Park is another popular one. There are a lot of like After Yangs because that was a Sloan film that year. It was like a sea of After Yang and AI and robots. So derive inspiration. If you have like a facial transplant expert in your community or you have stunt people in your community, you can absolutely put together similar things. The final question that I see here is about reporting and documenting the event. Someone saying that they struggled with filming and editing the final product, expectations and best reporting practices. I would follow up offline with Kristen McCracken about that, but in brief, like it doesn't need to be, like Christopher Doyle cinematography, like or anything super high end, anyone who can film things, we ask that if you can not do like vertical video on your phone, that's better. But we realize people have different resources available to them, and you can deliver the raw files to Dropbox. And we have an editor who actually works on all the footage we receive from the grantees, and there's like an intro sort of title slug that they put in, so it's kind of more uniform. It does go up on our YouTube Science on Screen page. With the help of Patrick, we're trying to get more of those archival videos out in the world, more exposure for them, which I think is good for everyone, for Science on Screen and the Grantee Network, to be able to share that. Some really fascinating talks by some incredible people. So and I think the more we make science accessible and use film as a way to spread the word, the better. I don't know. I don't see any other questions. Is there anyone else on the webinar who wants to ask anything? If not, we can wrap it a couple minutes early because people could always use a few extra minutes in their lives. But thank you for all for.
Oh, I saw one more
I
question
see
pop
one
up.
more.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Sorry. Just saw. Is there strict criteria on speakers and experts you choose? Okay, you're gonna follow up with Krista. Uh, Strict is maybe the wrong word. I think with the Sloan Foundation and certainly with the grant review process is we have a committee of probably like at least 16 people on the grant review committee. I read every single one of them, and many of my Coolidge colleagues read every single one of them, but we also have like experts from the community who are scientific experts and and in other fields in film who are reading through. And Sloan has let us know they do want there to be some STEM focus. So if everybody's like a psychologist or people have sometimes applied and had kind of uh people who aren't super directly in the science, like presentations that are kind of more what Rebecca was describing as like a talk back, like with like the social history of something and there's no scientific angle, that will be something that gets flagged by the grant committee because it's Sloan who funds this entire program, um, has given us feedback in the past that like there should be more of just make sure it's like there's a science focus in there. And certainly if you're doing three events, if one's a little bit softer science, that's maybe okay, but it should be there should be like a strong, STEM uh kind of emphasis in there. Anyone else have anything to ask?
I'll just add that, Beth, like I make sure I have a conversation with the person that I'm inviting to be the expert and like kind of lay that all out. As a non-science person, like I do my best to be like, I am not a science person. And like I always trip over every single intro because I'm reading their bios and there's like very big science words.
Oh, same.
I'm always like
Yeah.
art person, not science person, but I usually talk to them about that. And I mean, obviously, if they're like, they teach physics at like the University of Chicago, like I'm probably okay. But like, I'll like the stunt guys, I was very much like, hey, like, I need you to talk about like the physics of it. Like, what do you do? Like, I would like you, like, obviously, we could talk about just like how cool Jackie Chan is, but like, the point of this is for you to talk about the science of stunts, like how you prepare, what the physics are like. And they literally talked about, they were like, the guy brought like a diagram. He's like, so the car is going this way. I mean, he like really listened to what I said to him. And he was like, so the car is going this way. And if it's going that fast, like I need to think about like the jump that I have to do because like otherwise I'm going to break my legs, And so it was still a little soft around the edges with the science, but I knew that that one was okay because the other programs that we presented were harder sciences. But I definitely have talked through that because I've had those where like in the middle of the conversation, I'm like, oh, I don't know that this is really gonna like hit the requirements of the grant. And like this is the one we're recording, or like I win the report, I'm just gonna have to really kind of articulate that like this was much more of a like a kind of like a touchy-feely conversation and not like a sciencey conversation. So usually the experts that I've talked to like want to do well. And so it's clear that they're the right fit. And usually by reading their bio and like connecting them with the film, and it's usually not been a problem, but I that's been helpful to like make sure like I feel like I've got a good fit and it's going to be a good fit for the grant as well as the film as well as the audience.
Thank you. Well, thank you all so much for joining. Kate, I don't know if you have any parting words for the group. Of course, I encourage everybody and anybody to apply for the grant. It's so exciting to see how this has expanded its reach and to see so many theaters throughout the country doing what we all do best as art houses. We have like such creative, incredible programmers, and we really are so connected with our communities. And to the degree that this allows us to really further that work, we're really proud and happy about that. And thank you to Kate for all you do for the art house community. Do you want to tell us anything about Chicago or anything else?
Yeah, I'm so grateful for you guys for mentioning it. I'm really looking forward to seeing who I can in Chicago this summer at the Art House Convergence annual convening. We'll converge, convene. We're going to convene, converge. And Science on Screen will be there, so you can talk to Beth a little bit more if you have more questions about Science on Screen. And Rebecca Fons is hosting a nice little short presentation for us as well on Wednesday morning. And I really hope to see you all if this year, if possible. But if not, I'll see you next year, hopefully. And thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you so much, Beth, Colin, and Rebecca, for taking time out of your day to talk about this wonderful program. And I am super excited to catch some more films at the intersection of art and science. So.
Great.
Thank you. It's a
Thank
pleasure.
you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.